Hey everybody, it's Mr. Wagstaff. Cool stuff to talk about today. Alright, so we're still in Unit 1 and we're talking about colonization and the early colonization and the things that are happening. At this point in the story that we're telling, Spain's still the dominant power. They've kind of made a deal with Portugal. We're not, for U.S. history, not going to talk much about Portugal and their ability to take over stuff like Brazil and South America. So what you need to know at the start of today is that Spain is still a superpower because of the Armada. So after Christopher Columbus discovered new routes to the New World, they're going to send over the conquistadors that we talked about yesterday, wreck shop, and they're going to take gold, right? 3 G's really for any of the motivation for people coming over here, God, gold, or glory. We're going to start talking a little bit more today about the other G's, the glory and the God version of the motivations for people that would be moving from Europe over to the New World. But it's important to understand that Spain, they're the Big Mac daddies, and they can basically do whatever they want here in the New World because their Spanish Armada can basically regulate the seas, and they can stop anybody from coming over that they don't want to. All right? All right. So let me move myself over here in the corner. Oh, sometimes it gets a little touchy here. All righty. All right, good. Sometimes when it gets too bad, I have to start all over, but I'm not going to do that here. Boop, 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 boop. All right, so New France. We're going to be talking about France here to start with. France is going to be the first one who's going to start coming over here kind of against the desires of Spain. But what the logic is going to be is that they aren't coming over to mess with gold, or they're not going to be real far south where Spain is doing their thing. So Spain's down here in the Caribbean, in what's present-day Mexico, even some in Florida, down in South America. France is going to come over, and they're going to be in what is present-day Canada for the most part. Now, they're not coming over looking for gold, but France is kind of sneaking over here because they want something that is extremely valuable in Europe, in France and England. So there's something over here that they want that they're going to sell. Beavers, specifically beaver skins, all right? So beavers, here's another picture of a beaver, all right? Big old chubby animals. So beavers, this picture here shows it if you're not familiar with these animals. What do beavers do? They gnaw down trees and stuff. So there's a certain climate that beavers like to live in, which is the northern part of what is present-day America and Canada and in Europe. All right, that's where beavers live. However, in Europe for a long time, beavers are absolutely devastating to the environment over there. The reason is because here's what they do. They chew on wood and they build dams. They block up rivers, and since all civilizations are built originally near fresh water and rivers, if a river floods, people can all drown. Or even worse, and it's more likely, they dam up a river 100 miles north, and all of a sudden an entire civilization wakes up and there's not water, because the river has stopped 100 miles up. You can't go very long without water. And then all of a sudden, everybody dies. Beavers are one of the most dangerous animals in the minds of a lot of Europeans at the time, to the point where they are enemy number one. So you could make some money back when they started doing this. You could go out, if you killed a beaver and you took it to like town hall, whatever their version is, they would pay you probably in present day money, probably something like $100, maybe 50. All right. So they just want to get rid of these vicious, awful animals in Europe because they are devastating, and they could kill an entire population, not on purpose, but their natural tendency is to build dams and block water, can cause a ton of issues. So by the time the New World is discovered, the beavers are pretty much eradicated from Europe. They don't exist, all right? Since people in Europe had known about the beavers, all right, they had realized there are some benefits to the beavers, specifically their skin. Their skin is warm, and keep in mind, we're talking about places in Europe that are very cold and wet. Beaver skins, all right, are fur and they're waterproof. If you have a beaver skin jacket, it's like a waterproof fur coat. All right. So you couldn't get them anymore because there were no more beavers in Europe. Once the New World is found, France is like, they want to come over to the New World and get beaver pelts and then take them back and sell them in Europe. So that is what the motivation is for the French to come over, and how they're going to make money is to get these little guys' fur right here. So this here shows you where it says where beavers live. This is the natural habitat of the beavers. If you can see, and I like this map because if where beavers live, this is where they actually live. If you look at that natural habitat maps, it actually encompasses this whole area here. But those had been eradicated because of their destruction. So, but there's still a market for the beaver skins, and you could get them over here. Now, France knows that Spain is down here, and France ain't trying to pick a battle with Spain. So France is like, if we can just sneak north and come up into here, into the Canadian region, it wasn't called Canada at the time, but if we can come in the northern part here, Spain ain't going to care. As long as we ain't messing with no gold, there's not going to be anything there. We're going to come up here and we're going to get beaver skins. This happens pretty quickly for France, and it's relatively lucrative. And here's how easy it was for France. So the natives over here have never seen like plastic or little trinkets or stuff you get at like the dollar store. So those type of random trinkets are very rare in the New World because they have different colors and stuff and different dyes that you can put in, like, I say plastics, but just glass beads. Glass beads alone, the Native Americans thought it was like the most valuable thing, like more than gold. Like you had these colorful beads and stuff. So France would show up and be like, look at all these expensive beads I have. It cost them maybe $1.50 to make big bushels of them. And they would trade these beads, these glass beads, for beaver skins. So they'd show up, and the French didn't even have to hunt them. They would just be brought out to them with all these beaver skins, and they'd give them the trinkets, and then they sell right back to France. So France, they're not trying to set up any permanent settlements. They're just over here to get the beaver skins and head back. At the time, the French and Indians got along relatively well because all they did was really trade for the most part. There were skirmishes, but for the most part, they got along fine. Down here, the Spanish, they're not here to stay permanently. They're here to steal the gold and go back. The French, they're just trying to trade and go back. Nobody's trying to stay here permanently. And that's important as we get further into this story that we're telling here with colonization of the New World. This is just talking about some of the trade routes that are going to come in and try to trade. And there were a couple other things, but the main thing were the beaver pelts. And this is a picture of like natives trading beaver pelts to the French. The big barrel here might be filled with glass beads, and they were giving them a whole bunch. So, and this is as I was looking at pictures, this is what a beaver skin jacket looks like. I guess you can still get them. I mean, I guess why wouldn't you? But I don't know how awesome that looks if you're not in the 17 or 16 or 1500s. But it's a waterproof jacket. These things are crazy expensive in Europe. So this is very much a luxury good. So it was very much worth it for France to come over and do these types of tradings. And that's the question. The main reason for why France was coming over, it's for money, but it's the setup trade and has to do with the beaver skins. So as long as you understand that and just explain that in at least 2 complete sentences, you'll be fine. And as always, feel free to pause me if you need to write that in. All right. So now we're going to talk about the English coming to America. There's a lot of motivating factors on why the English are going to come to America. All right. Whenever one society goes from one place to another, and we'll talk a lot about this in U.S. history, in American 1 and American 2, there's concepts called push and pull factors. A push factor is usually something that's negative, that's happening where you are, that is pushing you out, why you don't want to live there. A pull factor is something that pulls you in, all right? So right here, let's talk about some of the push factors that are taking place in England at the time and why the people in England weren't real happy with where they were. There is a horrible economy. Poor farmers in England were removed from their lands to make room for sheep, right? Because people were trying to have wool and things like that. So there's some drama there with the farmers being pushed off their lands. People needed jobs. Primogeniture. Primogeniture is a big fancy word that means that the oldest son always inherits his parents' land. If you think of it like kings and stuff, where the oldest son becomes the king, they don't share the kingdom among, all the siblings. There's just one person that gets it. That is how inheritance worked. All right. And feudalism, we talked about that, but I want to show you, we talked about that in world history, if you remember, where people don't really own land. But I want to talk about this here. Now, as I look for graphs, this is actually one of the better graphs to explain it. This is a completely fictional version of primogeniture, even though it absolutely probably fits somewhere, if not a large area of Europe at different times. But this is actually primogeniture of how Westeros works, which is the fictional world in Game of Thrones. All right. So I put it up here. This is a fictional version of primogeniture, but it does explain it pretty well. I'll make myself a little smaller here. So you have a lord, a guy owns things. When he dies, all right, everything goes to the lord's younger son. All right. So obviously, because your kid has to be younger than you. The reason this is a problem, if you're born into a family of 10 kids, which wasn't horribly uncommon, I guess. If you had 10 kids and you're the sixth one in line, when your dad dies, because that's who owned the land, when your dad dies, all right, all the land goes to the oldest person. That's it. It doesn't get divided up evenly in society. So what this does is makes the vast majority of people in England unable to own land because they're never going to inherit it. Feudalism, all right, also is where people are tied to the land, it's kind of in its dying stages at the time, but it makes it nearly impossible to own land. If you can't own land, you can't own any of the stuff that you grow on the land. It was very, very, very difficult to survive in England unless you got born to a very lucky situation. All right. So the lack of land ownership was a big problem in England. In addition to that, there is religion. All right. So there's this thing called the Protestant Reformation. All right. Let me show you a map here. So in England, in Europe in general, everybody, generally speaking, is Christian. All right. There ends up being a split in the church. So you had the Catholic Church. All right. Then the Catholic Church is going to split basically between the Catholic Church and Protestantism. All right. People that are going to protest the Catholic Church. This all happens in the 1500s. All right. Protestantism is going to come out with Lutheranism, Presbyterian, the Baptist, Seventh-day Adventist. You're going to have a bunch of different versions of Christianity that are going to come out. This causes a problem in England at the time because the Catholic Church, whoever controls the church, has a very strong in the government because the Catholic Church can give money to the government to make sure that they stay in power. When the church splits, the government gets involved because it's a financial problem for the government as well because people aren't paying their tithes to the church and the church in return isn't supporting the government the way the government wants. So to oversimplify it, hopefully you remember some of this from world history. If not, bear with me. The church, they're going to battle Henry VIII. He starts mandating everybody be this or you'll be beheaded. And then his daughter Anne Boleyn goes back the other, or his daughter, his Bloody Mary starts going. She's called Bloody Mary because she starts murdering people who are the other religion. Everybody's really confused. What religion am I required to be? Otherwise I'll die. All right. They end up settling on the Church of England, the Anglican Church. And everybody has to be part of that church. So that it was kind of a compromise in their minds of trying to fix some of the problems that people have with the Catholic Church, but not be full Protestant. Well, there were a lot of people who felt very strongly about their religious beliefs and did not want to be forced to be a certain religion. So there's a lot of animosity in the country of England that desperately just wants to be able to go to church where they want and how they want. All right? So there is a motivation there to go somewhere else and create a new type of church. This logic, the primogeniture not being able to own land, wanting to be able to worship and all this other stuff, is really going to fundamentally change when these colonies get set up. All right, so we're not here yet. None of this here exists. But here is why when the English start showing up and setting up colonies, and again, we're still not there yet in the story, here is why even though England's going to be like the country number 3 to show up, they're going to be the dominant version over here in the New World, because when the English show up, they're going to show up and set up permanent settlements. When people are coming over because they want to own land, when people want to come over because they want to worship the way they want to, they ain't planning on going back. They're bringing over their families. These aren't just men coming over to make money and head back to go see their families. They're bringing they're bringing men and women over, all right? And because of that, we bring men and women. Don't know if y'all have been through health class or not. That is how you reproduce the human population. And very quickly, because not only are they here to stay permanently, but when they show up as men and women, and the population will grow very quickly. And because of that, it doesn't take within 100 years of it being founded, the English population in the New World is going to be vastly superior to any other population of Europeans over in the New World. And England, from a European standpoint, is really going to dominate the direction in the future of the New World, because when they come over here, they ain't going back. And that's the big difference between the English settlers when they will eventually come over. And we're getting ready to start talking about the very first English settlers that come over. The English settlers aren't coming over to steal something or take something or trade for something and head back. Most of the English, when they come over, are here to stay. All right. And that's the question here. Why were they more prepared to create permanent colonies than France and Spain were? We had talked about that. So make sure you get full sentences on that. As always, pause me if you need to. All right. Sir Walter Raleigh. Here in North Carolina, this is what our capital is named after, is Sir Walter Raleigh. Let me show you this here map. This is the best way of showing it. Boop, boop. Google. All right. So this here is a map, a globe of the world. So at the time, the Spanish were down here and was present-day Mexico, South America. Brazil was Portugal. And France had come over here and the northern part here of the New World, trading heavily for beaver pelts. All right. Nobody wants to tick off Spain. All right. Well, there's a guy who's like, I'm going to go a little further south. There's a guy named Sir Walter Raleigh. He's a rich, noble guy here in England. So Sir Walter Raleigh never comes to America. All right. He's one of these guys that are looking for glory. All right. So glory is just where he wants his name on something. And I guess he ends up getting it. I mean, Raleigh is named after Sir Walter Raleigh. So what he is going to do is he is going to fund a group, means he's going to put all the money behind it, to come over here and create a new colony. And he is going to create a colony here. Let's see if I can't find it. He is going to create a colony here on the Outer Banks. So he is going to send a group of people over with John White. So John White is an artist. And I'm always interested in why they always decide to label him as an artist. You wouldn't think an artist would be the guy you want in charge to go try to inhabit a land of, there's already a population here that may not like you. But for all intents and purposes, it does seem, I may have said that wrong. It may seem like he wouldn't be a good person put in charge, but he does a pretty solid job. So he comes over here and he is going to set up the very first colony at an area called Roanoke. All right. So he's going to come over here and he's going to create a colony called Roanoke in order to try to create a settlement here in the New World. It's the first real English settlement that's going to be created. All right. So here is a map at the time. So this is Roanoke Island. This is where he is going to come over and set up his colony. So at first, he does try, Sir Walter Raleigh tries it the first time, and there's too much hostility with the Native Americans, so he calls it off at the end of the 1500s and comes back the next year. John White tries to set up this new colony called Roanoke. All right. He brings over quite a few people. All right. So this here is Sir Walter Raleigh. This is the rich guy. He never comes over to the New World, but he's paying money to create this colony. This is John White. This is the artist. And again, I'm always surprised they always like to refer to him as an artist when he does seem to be relatively competent. No dig on artist, but why wouldn't you say it's John White the leader, John White the explorer? It's always John White the artist. So I don't know. Maybe he's a famous artist that I'm not aware of. So here's what happens. You can pretty much just, as far as this class goes, you can ignore that. This is the first attempts to come over. Didn't work out well. 100, so that didn't work out well. They're at war. All right, so here's where we want to be. All right. So the second group of 117 colonists come to Roanoke to set up shop. All right. Virginia Dare. All right. Like Dare County, North Carolina, is named after Virginia Dare. She's famous because she's a baby. She gets born here. She is the first baby born in the New World. European baby. All right. Because, again, millions of people were already here. So here's where the story gets weird. All right. So John White, he has to go back. So they set up shop later in the year. He's going to head back to England to get more supplies and come back in order to take care of Roanoke. Now, when he gets back to England, England is at war with the Spanish Armada, and we're going to talk about that next. All right. So when England's at war with Spanish Armada, everybody's ship gets taken by England and put into the Navy in order to go fight the Spanish Armada. So he doesn't have a chance to go back. They're supposed to be, waiting for him to show back up with more supplies to survive, and he can't make it back to them. And there's no internet or telephone. There's no way of him letting people know this. So, it takes him 3 years. He was supposed to be back like 6 months later. 3 years later, he finally shows back up. When John White shows back up, he finds out that the colony, poof, it's gone. Now, if it was just like, hey, it's gone, the mystery would still be there. But the mystery's even crazier because he shows back up. And he's like, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Like, now, if he'd shown up and everybody was dead, that absolutely could have happened. But he shows up and there's some weird things that have taken place. There does not appear to be a sign of struggle, but nobody is at Roanoke. He can tell that they have added on to it, that they had lived there for a long time. There are graves that are marked. These people had died of natural causes and they had buried them. There's no sign of like anything crazy really happening, but there's nobody there. Nobody. As he starts walking around, he starts realizing that clearly everybody just left. Like, there's not dead bodies. There's just nobody there. But a lot of their really important stuff, like frying pans, all right, cooking kettles, things that you can't get in the New World, are left in their houses. All right. So if they were raided and all that stuff would be stolen because that's extremely important to natives. But it's just sitting there. There is, you can tell there's like dinner plates still on tables. Like people were in the middle of dinner and said, "Oh, we're leaving," and they just got up and left. There was a group that that they worked with, that the settlers had worked with, called the Croatan tribe. It is carved on one of the trees. It's misspelled Croatoan, but it's the Croatan, which everybody assumes means that they went to go to the Croatans to help them out. or like we're leaving, maybe we're out of food, we're going to the crow. It doesn't explain a lot of the other stuff. And then on another tree, it's like halfway, it's like CROA, and then stops like somebody had gotten murdered halfway through carving it in a tree. Really weird. So John White, they're like, okay. So they clearly go to the Croatoans, and they go and ask them. Croatoans are like, yeah, we haven't seen them at all. We were expecting to trade with them, and they just poof disappeared. And it is a really, really confusing thing. John White stays for a while. There's some bad weather that prevents him from really going and digging into this as much as he wants. But they never, Roanoke is now referred to in history as the lost colony. They never find them. There's no graves. There's no nothing. They just get back in a boat and head back to Europe. And nobody ever knows what happens to them. Now, so I'm random tidbit. So while Europe never knows what happens to them, doing research in grad school for stuff on John Smith and Pocahontas, once Jamestown shows up, which we'll start talking about tomorrow, that they'll figure out the natives are 100% confident of what happened to them. All right. So what ended up happening is, according to native legend, that this is verbal, that they had left because they were starving to death and went and lived with an Indian group that were not the Croatoans further north. All right, that was in Virginia, and they went and lived with them. However, within a few years, especially once there's some other issues that happen. I'm not going to go into it. But that Indian tribe ends up getting in a war with another Indian tribe, a much bigger Indian tribe, and the bigger Indian tribe completely annihilates that Indian tribe, including any of the colonists that were living there. And that is why there is no lineage, and you don't see any blonde hair, Indian children or anything like that. So the Indians 100% believe that they had went, and they're like, yeah, they went and lived with so-and-so, but then they started a war and they all just got killed. So that is the belief in the Native American history. There is no question on what happens. But in Europe, we just have never, the European settlers never came up with an effective solution to what actually happened. But why would the Native Americans lie about it? I mean, I do believe they 100% believe it, but we'll talk about tomorrow some of the issues that go along with Native American history and all that. All right. So Tim Wilder's Roanoke failure as a permanent settlement. We just got done talking about. It's called the Lost Colony. So explain what happens there in complete sentences. Pause me if you need, and we're going to head on. All right. So the Spanish. Once the Spanish realized that England is trying to set up a colony here. Now, this is when John White goes over. Spain's like, nah. Spain's like, it's hammer dropping time. The Spanish Armada rolls out. Changes the world drastically. All right. So Spain shows up and is mad at England here. All right. So Spain is down here below France. And they roll up here with their Armada to fight England. About everything that can go wrong for Spain does. These big storms hit and they're not able to fight, and it allows England time to get into position. The Spanish Armada has these massive, powerful ships called galleons. All right, that's what everybody's terrified of. Well, England has been the war has been declared on them, so England has much smaller ships. So it ends up being quickness versus strength. The smaller English ships are able to race in, attack these big galleons, and be able to basically get out before the galleons can do all their massive damage. And they just kind of nickel and dime them. And then in these huge storms, the larger Spanish ships just get destroyed. England, since they've come to find them, England can dock their ships. Spain basically has to just stay in the ocean when this happens and just gets decimated. Over half of their navy gets wiped out trying to fight here, and it's in 1588. This is just a drawing or cartoon of just the Spanish Armada just getting destroyed. A lot of it was weather. Spain was really overconfident, so who'd they put in charge of their navy? It was the rich guy down the street that they owed a favor, somebody with no naval experience. So Spain, overconfident and bad luck, just gets annihilated by England, and the Spanish Armada is no longer a thing. Once the Spanish Armada is wiped out, England now has the largest navy on earth, right? When that happens, there's no stopping England from going over and setting up as many settlements as they want across the Atlantic Ocean because Spain can no longer do it. England never really attempts to send any like conquistadors down to get gold because pretty much all the gold had already been picked clean by Spain. But the defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588 is going to really change the direction of war and society in the New World, specifically because what it's going to do is going to allow England to go show up, make colonies, and make more permanent settlements in the New World. So that's what the question is here. Make sure you answer that, and I will see you guys tomorrow.